Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back another Japanese deep dive with Kinji Fukasaku. This is the final video in this little mini series that I've been doing all the way from the early 60s, now ending on 1972, Street Mobster. It's been a real blast watching a lot of these films and kind of diving into more Japanese cinema, which I really wanted to do for this year, and to kind of explore a Pacific director which has a lot of movies under his belt, a lot of variety. Despite having a lot of Yakuza-based kind of titles in his collection, he is definitely venturing into kind of more supernatural fantasy, American collaborations, more dramas, adaptations, love stories. You know, this guy is very versatile when he wants to be. He sticks to what he knows very well, and he does it very, very well. But when he kind of pushes himself out there, the results can be quite interesting. And obviously the final movie he would have done would be his best film up to this point anyway, which is the Battle Royale, which is the very first film I saw this director, which I think many people would have seen internationally, whether you know the director or not. Everyone knows Battle Royale, so it's fantastic. His final proper big movie, if you don't count Battle Royale 2 and his one shot he did, is a celebration of that. It's nice to kind of retroactively work backwards and kind of explore his kind of filmography in a kind of appreciative kind of way, which I'd say a big thank you to everyone who's been interacting with these videos and liking and kind of sharing their thoughts as well. And if you're watching through the playlist, which I put together, hopefully by this point, if you're in the future, hopefully all these videos will be done and finished, and you can watch all the way from what I have access to all the way up until the very finish. So hopefully that will be a very entertaining kind of series of kind of videos to try and check out and kind of give you my perspective on this guy's fantastic career. Street Mobster, released in 1972, starring Buta Sugawara, hopefully incorrectly, would star in his first kind of collaboration with Kinji Fukasaku in this film, which would go on to do the infamous Battle Without Honor series, which would be the main star for those films, as far as I might know. This is his first collaboration with the director 1 year prior to doing this epic series of kind of gangster kind of Yakuza-based movies that would change the course of Japanese cinema and be infamous within, not just within Japanese kind of culture, but also within international, in terms of America, UK. Everyone knows the Battle Without Honor movies, and I've not seen any of them. So I'm very, very curious to see if those films stack up, whether they live to the hype, whether they can compare to the other ones I've always seen prior to this, because I've seen quite a few of his Yakuza-based films, and I think I've got a good sense of what this director likes to do and what kind of storylines he likes to dive into. And he's definitely, even though he does the same type of story in a kind of a rinse and repeat kind of fashion, he always changes it up with interesting performances and social commentary, and he likes to talk about a very specific kind of area within 70s culture during that time, or based on a true story from a real-life Yakuza gangster, or what was going on during that kind of time period. And so I am very curious and quite anxious to check out that kind of series of films soon, being the fact how they're going to stack up compared to what I've already seen. I think I've already seen some of the best of Kinji Fukasaku's kind of Yakuza movies with Sympathy for Underdogs, Japanese Organized Crime Boss. Fantastic. Those are really stellar films, really excellent movies that I really enjoyed that kind of journey going into. And he always wants to create a fine line between an entertaining piece for an hour-and-a-half movie. He's always giving you an entertaining film. He wants to give the audience what they want. He's been paid and financed by these companies to give you an hour-and-a-half movie in the cinemas during that time. And his films are always very stylized in terms of erratic editing. He's always kind of playing up with different types of lenses and close-ups, and he always wants to kind of keep the action, the kind of the fighting and the gunplay, or the violence quite aggressive and quite fast-paced within his kind of editing style. And he lingers on some shots, and he then kind of wraps up some things very quickly, and he's definitely got into that now, obviously from Japanese Organized Crime Boss onwards, I would say, which he's kind of altered his style a little bit to kind of fit the kind of the new wave, this new 70s of Japanese cinema. And one of the things that's kind of really apparent now while watching this film, and knowing some films I have watched already, he is definitely giving you an entertaining film. He's definitely giving you characters that you're going to like or not like. Sometimes there's a character that might be better than others. Sometimes all of them might be scumbags or pieces of shit. Or there's something you can get from the film, or there's a point to these films that you can understand. And I think with Street Mobster, this leans a lot more into the Graveyard of Honor kind of wave of thinking, less than the Sympathy for the Underdog. They always had a character that you can get behind, someone you can understand they're in a tough position, or they were ex-Yakuza, or they were a bad person, and they're trying to do the right thing. They're still villains or anti-hero characters, essentially, but they always kind of see the error of their ways, or they're recognizing that times have changed, or they have no family, or their friends are dying, or, you know, they're being betrayed by, you know, over, you know, their closest friends, basically, for money and wealth and greed, and it always ends in violent, nasty bloodbath. There's always something that you can hook onto as a character or an idea that you can move forward in that film, and you can get something behind it. With this film in particular, with Street Mobster, and within the Graveyard of Honor, if you watch my videos for them prior to doing this video series, these are based on characters that are truly horrible, truly despicable, have very little redeeming factor to them, and are very dark, bleak movies. And it just purely comes down to, what are you getting from this experience for an hour-and-a-half movie? Now, within the Graveyard of Honor, I didn't like those films. They're based on a true story of a real-life person that did these things. That's why I had a remake, and it was a one-man person's journey through basically being a complete psychopath, you know, betraying everyone he comes across, doing drugs, prostitution, he just, you know, going against kind of, you know, rival kind of gangs, but also killing his own friends, and just being a whole all-round nasty piece of shit that, you know, whether you get something behind that, whether you want that kind of cathartic kind of experience, is up to you. But for me, I felt there's nothing in that film, and even the remake, to get behind or to enjoy. Now with Street Mobster, it's very similar but quite different. This was definitely on his mindset. You know, one of the things that's come really apparent by watching this film and kind of recognizing how he does Yakuza films now anyway, you know, he's doing this little period of, you know, heroic type of character, anti-villain type characters within his previous films. Now he's getting to a point where he's thinking, you know what, I really don't want these Yakuza characters to be shown in any form of positive light. I want you as an audience member to follow the most nastiest piece of shit you're going to see on screen, and I want you to show how horrible this world is, how horrible being a Yakuza really is, or being a kind of gangster kind of character, and how the people review that. And one of the things I have for this film, which I think is positive, is on that fact. Is the film is demonstrating for an hour-and-a-half movie how much you do not want to be this kind of person. It's giving you an entertaining film for an hour-and-a-half. It's giving you the stylized kind of rapid editing. It's giving you the violence. It's giving you some of the comedy, the dark comedy. It's giving you a fantasy kind of thing of the life of a kind of reckless kind of, you know, asshole, essentially. But what does it ultimately serve? What does it ultimately get you by the end? It gets you nowhere. It gives you nothing. It takes and takes and takes, and you just swallow everything around you. And that is what the film's ultimate goal is. And I can see what Kinji Fukasaku is doing specifically within this film compared to something like Graveyard of Honor. That film for me just does not work, because it's a one-man reign of terror based on a true story, based on a real-life Yakuza gang member. And this film, it's the point of the film is trying to say, don't be like this. Parasites, they are leeches. And, you know, it's an interesting kind of talking point within, you know, this character gets released from prison. They kind of have this kind of montage sequence during the start of the film where he kind of just goes on a bit of a bender. He's young, he's ambitious, he just basically wants to kind of make money, abuse people, particularly women, raping and getting women into prostitution. He basically doesn't want to give half of his funds up to a rival gang, and then takes personal offense when he gets beaten up for it, goes after him, spends time in prison, gets released from prison, and gets kind of shown into the new kind of era of the 70s. You know, he kind of describes men looking like chicks because they've got longer hair, things are different, the attitude's a little different. You know, he's had a slice of his life in prison. And one of the interesting kind of talking points within the film, which I think is quite fascinating, is when he gets released from prison, he's released with a friend. This person basically is also a nasty person who basically gives a really nasty kind of double scar to this woman, which is waiting for him outside. And basically he wants to join him on his kind of wild out adventure kind of thing, you know, risk it all kind of thing, be an underworld, be a reckless kind of rebel within the world of kind of Japan, and just not be tied down. And that character comes back later on and basically is saying, oh, I wish I could join you. I wish I could relive the old days, the glory days. He has responsibility now. He has basically a shack. He has a wife, surprisingly, that despite having a really nasty scar, is still loyal to him and basically wants to be him. And he might have a kid as well, I believe. They don't show it, but I do believe he might be having a kid. And basically he's just facing reality, the reality of that world, you know, post-World War II within kind of Japan, especially coming into the 70s now, which is still kind of the repercussions of that, and the thinking and the attitude of that is still very much kind of down, depressing, miserable. And, you know, to be someone, to have respect, to have wealth, to have, you know, freedom, a sense of freedom, which, you know, the older generation, the younger generation has been explored quite a few times within Kinji Fukasaku, is shown within that kind of sequence. You know, you've got a character, our main protagonist, which is still in the mindset of being a young, ambitious, hungry, driven, you know, nasty character, essentially, within an older man's body, and he refuses to kind of give up or, you know, back down, essentially. And you've got someone who is unfortunately facing reality or facing the facts, and kind of, you know, he's done his time in prison. Now he has to kind of settle down and, you know, be someone of normal society, I suppose. And that's reflected quite interestingly within a character that comes within the film, probably the only sympathetic character you're ever going to see in the film. And even then, very heavy case of Stockholm syndrome, completely off her mind, but a character which is quite tragic, and you do feel something for her, which is a character which basically comes across our main protagonist again, and realizes this person ruined her life. You know, she was a young person, individual, innocent, and she was basically attacked, raped, and sold into prostitution, and she's kind of lived in that lifestyle since then, up until the point he goes into prison, until the point of release from prison. And she comes across him again, wants to kill him, chasing him down the street, and then somehow manages to fall in love with him and have this really kind of abuser versus victim kind of relationship. And that's something that's demonstrated twice within the film, this idea of, you know, I am latched onto this person now. You have stolen a part of my identity, who I am. And being the fact this is 70s Japan, mental health wasn't really a talking point. The viewpoint of women was very low, very kind of, you know, dismissive, disposable, especially within a lot of these films. You know, they're always kind of, you know, the love interest or a victim or someone who gets in the way or devious kind of thing. They're always portrayed in a very certain light. And unfortunately for this character, she is someone who is infatuated and says, I love, you know, my abuser and rapist, essentially, in the film. And, you know, it's quite shocking. And there is a form of connection there. And whether that connection is healthy, it probably definitely is not, absolutely. But the consequences of her actions and her being associated with this person definitely falls into head towards the end of the film, for sure. And it's, you know, quite horrible, and, you know, it's a very sad character ultimately, and that leads into the bigger theme of the film and this message that Kinji Fukasaku wants to kind of drill into the viewer's head of, don't be a Yakuza, don't glorify these characters. He wants to ruin the reputation of being a Yakuza type character and being someone in that world. You know, yeah, you can be free, yeah, you can have mates and go on rampages, but what's it going to get you by the end? And it's a talking point even within the more higher class kind of underworld characters, the ones that the rival kind of gangs. You know, there's a point in the film they say, oh, well, should we kill him? No, we don't kill him yet, we'll just let this ride out a little bit longer. But even they're saying, oh wow, we remember the old glory days, the golden wild days. And even they're saying they were worse than him when he was younger. But they've got suits, they've got class, they've got respectable kind of businesses, obviously very kind of dangerous ones, obviously, but they are much more higher caliber in terms of criminals, and they've been doing it for much longer, very successful, compared to this person, which is more reckless and, you know, just kind of throwing himself out there without really kind of a second's thought. And he's clearly not very good at it, because he constantly gets beaten up, he constantly gets exposed, he's getting people killed, he's getting people abused in the process and putting people in danger, including himself. And it's just showing a kind of an idea of, you know, if you are young, if you are ambitious, put your talents to something more better for society, better for the world. Do not be this type of individual. And I think that is apparent within this film. Overall, Street Mobster, I think, is a very dark, nasty, sleazy, violent, bleak movie from start to finish, but it has a very specific point, and I recognize it has some glimmer of hope and, you know, sympathy for some characters. Our main character is not someone to root for, not someone to get behind. If anything, you could say the film is a victim of circumstance and a victim of just being young, ambitious, and not having the right kind of path to go on to, or maybe the opportunities weren't there. It definitely raises questions, and it definitely kind of gets you thinking about what was going on during that time period, compared to something like A Graveyard of Honor, which is more of a one-man reign of terror character based on a true story, which is a bit different compared to something like this, which is a more of a talking piece, cleverly hidden within an hour and a half Yakuza violent, nasty film, which is apparent. Definitely think it's a one-off. I wouldn't revisit this one again. Depending on the outcome of the box set for the other two, will determine whether I keep this film or not. If this was an individual film, I would have always sold it. I would have got rid of it. It's just not something to re-explore. For me, there is better movies that channel this energy within other movies, within the kind of, not just within Japanese cinema, but also in Hong Kong. Election 1 and 2, I think, is a good example of that within Hong Kong culture, of tryout culture. And I think definitely demonstrates the shocking nature of being, I think, both from a category 3 films. So there are other movies that can channel that energy, but can put them into better use. This film, its message is loud and clear. Its characters are deliberately presented in a very specific way. And I think it achieves exactly what Kinji Fukasaku was trying to do. Whether you get some cathartic kind of experience out of this, whether you enjoy the general action of the characters or what's going on in the film, if you like the mood of what this film's trying to go for, that is perfectly fine. Definitely is not for me in terms of a rewatchability film for sure. So what are your thoughts and opinions on Street Mobster? What are your thoughts on the Arrow edition? This edition itself is just a very standard HD release. You've got the audio commentary, you've got theatrical trailer, still gallery, just a very standard release. Nice HD presentation, but don't expect a wealth of extras. You're not going to get it on this edition. I will be back very, very soon to dive into the monster that is the Battle Without Honor and Humanity collection. I'm looking forward to checking that very soon, guys. So in the meantime, guys, I'm for reviews. Signing out.